Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Norwegian on the home side, half Estonian on the away side, and both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel a number of times before. We've had some really nice beers from both breweries over the years, and if people were to ask me about these breweries, I would say that both really are pioneers within their respective countries. Probably the most memorable beers I've had from both of them would be the kind of stronger and more malty things, but they both have some really nice lighter and more sessionable beers as well in their inventory. So yeah, definitely two breweries that I recommend you check out if you get the chance. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I know both breweries can do very, very well. It's also got that little bit of something extra special about it as well, which you'll see in a minute. And this is a beer that I actually bought maybe about 18 months or so ago in Copenhagen, if memory serves me correctly. It kind of got pushed to the back of the cupboard because I was saving it for a special occasion, along with another one from the same series actually. But no time like the present, I think it is about time to crack this one open and have a taste of it and see what it's all about. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, for the home side of things, we are going to head up to Stavanger in Norway, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Lervig Aktiebryggeri. So this beer is the first one I'm tasting from their Rack House series, which seems to be their big barrel-aged stuff. This one is called Night by the Lake. It comes in at 13.3% ABV. It's an Imperial Stout aged in a mixture of bourbon, rum and maple syrup barrels. But it also happens to be brewed in collaboration with the wonderful Pohjala from Tallinn in Estonia. So yeah, this should be quite exciting. Like I say, this beer was released maybe a year or two ago, and I think it's more than a year ago. I'm pretty sure I bought this 18 months ago in Kiosk over in Copenhagen, and yeah, it just kind of got pushed to the back of the cupboard along with another one which you'll see reviewed at a later date. But I just thought I wanted to try this one. It's been a wee while since we've had a Norwegian or an Estonian beer on the channel, and this just kind of struck my fancy when I was looking through my cupboard. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's all about. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about both the breweries involved in this one before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Lervig Aktiebryggeri and from Põhjala Pruulikoda, and we will no doubt add more to both of those lists at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just go into the homepage, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they should pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries, and you'll find this one in both the Norwegian playlist and also the Estonian one, because it is dual nationality. There are many other playlists there as well that you can check out, and there are a lot of other beers in both of those playlists I've just mentioned as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then to chat a little bit about Lervig Aktiebryggeri and Põhjala Pruulikoda. We'll start off with Lervig though, since these guys are the home brewery in this instance. So Lervig Aktiebryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Stavanger in southwestern Norway, and the company was founded back in 2003 after the Tolo brewery was sold to Carlsberg, and they subsequently moved production down to Oslo, or over to Oslo I guess we should say. But for a while the beers were produced at Mack Ølbryggeri in Tromsø, away up in the north. However, production was moved to Hillevåg in Stavanger back in 2005. So the head brewer for Lervig is Mike Murphy, and he's been with them since 2010. But prior to him coming, the brewery were making many kind of light lager beers, but it was Mike that really moved them in the direction of making the more kind of punchy American style craft beers, and this of course is where they've really made their name. But Mike apparently played quite an important role in the Danish craft beer revolution, and he collaborated with several of the renowned brewers such as Mikkel and Jeppe Bjerg. So of course Mikkel of Mikkel, or Jeppe of Evil Twin Brewing, Sean Hill, of course, who went on to found Hill Farmstead over in the US, and then Andreas Kiesmeyer, who was involved quite heavily at Nürburgring and also Fano as well, if I remember correctly. But he also worked for Birra del Borgo in Italy for a while, but he is now a partner in the company and owns about 5% of the brewery. But the CEO of the company is Anders Kleistrup, and the main owner of the brewery was originally Christopher Stensrud, who owns 67% of the shares. But in 2018, Orkita Capital, who also own part of Mikkeller, bought a 50% share of the company, and they've been helping them to expand over the last few years. But they are looking at opening up a new facility called Ulhelene in Stavanger at some point soon. I haven't heard any more about the progress that that's been making. I think it was put on ice because of the COVID-19 pandemic, so we will see what the developments on that are over the next little while. But these guys export about 1/3 of their total production volume. Of course, Norway is a very small country, about 4.5 million people, if memory serves me correctly. And this brewery actually exports quite an impressive fraction of all the craft beer that's exported from Norway. It's somewhere in the region of like 15-20% or something like that. But as of February 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, Lervig have produced around 285 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And like I said to you, these guys are one of the pioneers and one of the really respected Norwegian craft breweries. I mean, these guys, Handbryggeriet, Nugna are still doing some very interesting stuff, and of course you've got Amundsen, who came along a little bit later, but those are probably the four best known Norwegian craft breweries these days, come to think of it. But yeah, probably the cult classic beer for me when it comes to Lervig Aktiebryggeri would either be the 3-bean stout. That's a beautiful, beautiful beer, but Conrad Imperial Stout, one of the original Imperial Stouts they did, is very, very nice as well. So I would recommend that you check that one out if you get the chance. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Lervig Aktiebryggeri. So if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with the latest goings on, or of course you can check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on to the Estonian side of things then, to Põhjala Pruulikoda. So Põhjala, as I've told you before, are based in Tallinn, the Estonian capital in the northwest of the country, and the company was founded by Peter Cake, N. Parel, Green Nurmits, and they were later joined by Tiit Pannanen. But the group went on a fact-finding mission to Brewdog in Scotland after Punk IPA reached Estonia, because they were really, curious about brewing their own beers. But it was there that two of the founders, who were actually interning with Brewdog at the time, encountered Chris Pilkington, who went on to join them as their head brewer, and he is now a partner in the company as well. But Chris had actually graduated in marketing, but he was an avid home brewer, and he was producing some really interesting beers on the Brewdog pilot kit, and it was this that inspired the guys from Põhjala to invite him to come over to Estonia and join the company. But Põhjala Pruulikoda was officially founded back in 2012, and then from 2013 they began to gypsy brew at a few other breweries around the Tallinn area. But they opened their first brewery in May of 2014 in the Numa district to the south of the city, and this had an initial capacity of 12 hectolitres, but this was then scaled up considerably over the coming years. But they started their exports in 2015, and the brewery are now widely known throughout Europe and further afield. Põhjala are probably the best known of the Estonian craft breweries. But at this brewery they also had a tap room with 24 different taps, and things really went very well for them. But fast forward to 2018, they moved to a new brewery in the Noblessner shipyard in northern Tallinn, which is an old I think it was an old ship facility or an old submarine base or something like that, but it's quite an impressive facility, I have to say. And this new brewery has a 50 hectolitre brew house. I think it was a Rolec kit that they had, if I remember correctly. They've got an even bigger tap room there, and they've also got an American barbecue restaurant, which is very, very nice. But they're apparently considering opening up a bakery as well, from what I understand. And as of February 2023, these guys have produced around 120 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. So yeah, quite an impressive brewery as well. If you want to see what it looks like, you can check out my out and about video that I did there. I also did an interview with N and Chris from the brewery, which was very nice. That was filmed maybe about a year and a half ago now, but both very, very nice guys, and it was great to film that with them. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Lervig Aktiebryggeri and Põhjala Pruulikoda for the moment. So that is the end of your history section. But if you want to learn more, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that they've done. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So like I said to you, this one is from Lervig Aktiebryggeri's Rackhouse series. This is the first one I'm reviewing on the channel from Lervig Aktiebryggeri's Rackhouse series, of course. But this particular beer, I'm pretty sure I actually tried this one in one of the staff tastings that we had at Bishop's Arms, because we do have a few bottles of this, and when I tried it, I'd completely forgotten that I'd bought the bottle about a year earlier or something like that. This beer was released in Copenhagen quite a little bit before it reached Sweden, from what I understand. I think the beer was actually, they brewed it back in about 2020, and then it stayed in the barrels for about a year, and they released it in early 2021. But we didn't get bottles of this at Bishop's Arms until maybe about September or so, September or October of 2022. So yeah, this had obviously been sitting in the importers for quite a wee while. But yeah, I definitely bought this one back in Copenhagen around, I'm pretty sure it was like summer 2021 or something. I bought this beer. I got it along with one that Lervig did in collaboration with Amundsen as well, because the two of them just kind of struck my fancy. But yeah, it tells you a little bit about the beer on the back here. After a summer 2020 weekend in the Norwegian wilderness with Põhjala, we filled Imperial Stout into a very specific ratio of rum, bourbon and maple syrup barrels. Over a year later, these barrels have imparted a diversity of flavours and aromas into the beer that go beyond the characteristics of the liquids that they once contained. Best enjoyed outdoors with friends, 13.3% ABV. So yeah, should be quite nice. And obviously this beer, it says it's best before the 1st of the 12th, 2026. So maybe I bought this a little bit later actually. Maybe I got this in like December or January of 2022. But yeah, certainly the bottle that we got of this arrived in at our pub in Malmo like later in the year. But yeah, I've definitely had this beer a year at least. So yeah, this should be quite nice. Like I say, a 13.3% Imperial Stout aged in bourbon, rum and maple syrup barrels. Lervig are the home brewery, Põhjala are the away brewery. Let's get this guy out, get on with the tasting and see what it's all about, if we can get the thing open. If I can get this underneath. There we are. Need to see, might need to pause the video to open this thing up, but let's do this. Yeah, I think this is going to need to pause. Just a second. Alright, so I cut a little chunk out the side of the wax. We should hopefully be able to get under this now and get the thing open. Let's do this. There we are, got it. So yeah, I did cut a line around this one before we opened it up, but obviously that wasn't quite enough. But yeah, there you can see, nice wax top on the bottle there. Nicely presented as always, the Lervig star and the Põhjala brewery symbol. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. Very, very curious about this one, as I said. So, is there much in the way of sediment in the bottle here? No, not a lot actually. I'm surprised at that. So, there we go. Let me just reposition this so it looks nice. But yeah, this beer has poured pretty much as you would expect of an Imperial Stout. So yeah, in terms of the head on this one, before it disappears, because it probably will disappear quite quickly, you can see that it's got about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium tan head on this one. It's not too dark and beige, but yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there with this one, and it does look really, really nice, I have to say. So yeah, you can see that head is just fading away to be a very thin foamy layer, but then yeah, you've got that thicker ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, in terms of the colour with this one, if we shine the light through it, it's pretty much black as night, which you would expect of a big Imperial Stout such as this one. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. This is one, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But when it comes to black beers like Imperial Stouts, it's quite difficult to influence the colour with barrel aging or adjuncts, to be honest with you. But yeah, as I say, this beer is black as night. When you shine the light through it, it doesn't even really have like a cola or Pepsi coloured edge to it. But yeah, let's take a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see what it's all about. I'm very, very curious about this. Oh yeah, that's interesting. Now, the initial impression I have of this beer is that it's going to be one of these stouts that's quite straight shooting and straightforward in what it does, but it just does it really nicely. The first impression that I have of the aroma is that it's not madly complex, but I think this is one of these beers where we're going to get a lot more complexity out of the flavour than we are of the aroma, to be honest with you. But yeah, with this one, I have to say it does smell really nice. Like I say, very straight shooting, but it just smells absolutely lovely. So the backbone of the beer, you have this lovely kind of smooth woody character coming out of it, which I think is great. So yeah, that lovely kind of smooth oaky note from the rum barrels and the bourbon barrels. I'm not sure exactly if they use oak for maple syrup, to be honest with you, but still, it does go together really nicely in that sense. But yeah, you can smell this lovely kind of smooth American sort of oak. There's a little touch of vanilla in there, and of course you've got the different spirits on top of that. You can smell the slight, it's very, very sweet, and I think the maple syrup actually dominates in that sense, but you can get little hints of the bourbon and the rum underneath. But yeah, the aroma of this one on the barrel side of things is really, really nice. So smooth American oak, little bit of vanilla, lovely little bits of brown sugar. You've got, as I say, quite this really sweet character from the maple syrup. Also the bourbon sugars in there, and you also have that little bit of, as I say, you've got that little bit of just, rummy sweetness as well. So yeah, interesting in that sense. On top of that though, you've got the actual stout, and the stout smells like really thick and almost kind of sludgy in a way. I really would not be surprised if this was like a double or even triple mash Imperial Stout, this one, because you can just smell the thickness out of this thing. So for me, there's a little touch of that roasty toasty kind of well-fire bread crust in there, but not overly much. This one, it says on the back of the bottle here it contains oats, and that really isn't a surprise to me either, because you can just smell the pure smoothness that this beer has. So yeah, you can smell there's a little bit of that roasty toasty well-fire black malt. I do get a little bit of a sweeter kind of like rye bready quality out of it. And then yeah, above that, there's a little touch of an almost kind of like brandy soaked cake or something to it. And then you've got a bit of chocolate. There's, for me, the chocolatey notes in this one, there's a sort of 50% cocoa chocolate coming out of the beer. Yeah, so 50% cocoa chocolate. And then you've got quite a bit of brown sugar, definitely some kind of treacle and molasses, a little bit of a brighter caramel as well. And you've also got like wee touches of a more it doesn't come across as overly leathery in this one, and it's the fact that the sugars aren't leathery that makes me think this is more like a double mash Imperial Stout rather than being like a long boil one, if that makes sense. Because remember, the longer you boil the water, the more the sugars caramelise, and of course that translates to more leathery flavours. But yeah, sweet caramel, big treacly molasses notes, and then you've also got a little bit of a toasty brown sugary element to the beer as well. So yeah, the way this goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, malty side of things is pretty good. In terms of the hoppy character of the beer, there's not too much to report in this one. I mean, this beer, I think at this stage is, I think at this point it's been in the bottle about a year and 2 months or something like that, maybe a little bit, maybe between a year and 18 months it's been in the bottle actually. So that's one thing we need to remember this, and it's also barrel aged as well, so the hoppy character will of course drop out of the beer over time, but you still get, there's a little bit of smooth earthiness in there, there's a little bit of herbal note, and you do just get little elements of grassiness, but quite a bit of the green component of this beer has dropped out of it, that's definitely fair to say, but still noticeable. And on the fruity side of this one, for me, you do get a little bit of this kind of phenolic quality to it, you know, a little bit of that kind of medicinal type thing. There's a wee bit of that going on, but definitely it's got quite a round, plummy top. There's a little bit of raisiny sharpness in there as well, but yeah, raisins, big plummy character for me. There's a little bit of prune and date underneath, and I'm also getting little bits of like, yeah, I'm also getting a little bit of a kind of figgy and blackberry type note out of this one as well. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like how that goes together actually. It is pretty damn nice. So, yeah, aroma wise, I do like that about this one. It's a beautiful aroma, this one. It does actually give you more complexity the more you smell of it, but I really think this beer is going to show what it's all about when we actually taste the thing. So let's do that and actually have a look at this one. So yeah, this one is the Night by the Lake from the Rack House series from Lervig Aktiebryggeri in Stavanger in Norway, brewed in collaboration with Põhjala Pruulikoda, 13.3% Imperial Stout aged in bourbon, rum and maple syrup barrels. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers, or as they say in Estonia, terve sex. Let's do this. Oh yeah. I'm going to say straight away, that's a beautiful, beautiful beer. Wouldn't expect anything less of Lervig or Pohjala, and you know, especially when they put their heads together, and it's from one of the more kind of premium series of beers, if we can call it that, from Lervig Aktiebryggeri. That is something pretty damn special, I have to say. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. And as I was saying when we were looking at this beer, it's yeah, the complexity really comes out of this one when you actually drink the thing. Yeah, this is a really interesting beer for me. It's the barrel side of this beer gives it a good little bit of dryness, but the sweetness of the brown sugars on top of that really kind of rings through, and it's a lovely kind of smooth stout on top of that. You've got the fruitiness. This beer kind of just gives you everything you want. Like I say, it's in some ways it's a surprise to me how flavourful this beer is in comparison to what we were picking up from the aroma. But in other ways it's not, because you know, I've had beers that have done this kind of thing on the channel before. There are quite a few Imperial Stouts that will surprise you with how big in flavour they are compared to the aroma. A lot of Imperial Stouts can be quite reserved in terms of their aroma, but this is lovely. So as I say, a massive thumbs up to both breweries for this one. This is really lovely. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? Middle third of your palate, as we always do. I don't know why I say that. Makes no sense, but still. Anyway, middle third of your palate. You've got a lovely little bit of, you can taste that lovely smooth, oaky backbone there in this one. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you do get a little touch of vanilla. But what I will say about this one, because you've got three different types of barrels there, you get this really oily layer on top of the wood. And I do think the maple syrup kind of dominates a little bit. I'd be curious to know what the ratio of the barrels are, but you certainly can. Like, I think you've got the wood in the base, you've got the bourbon, and then you've got the rum on top of that. You can feel the little bourbon layer and then the rum layer, but then you just have this really kind of thick layer of like maple syrup sitting on top of that. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, so flavour wise, this beer goes together really well in that sense. It is quite a barrel forward. It is like a really barrel forward Imperial Stout, this one, but I remember we had the Paragon barley wine, the Rack House version for 2022, if I remember rightly it was. We had that one on on tap in the bar, and it was really, as I say, it was very barrel forward, but even compared to the 2019 and 2020 versions that I've had before. This obviously is a 2021 vintage beer, actually. But yeah, this one is really quite barrel forward in that sense. But yeah, this is very, very nice. Yeah, so very barrel forward, but the barrel character on this one is really big and really oily, but it still works. Above that, though, you start to get the stouty characteristics out of this one, and what you will notice is that further into the aftertaste, above that kind of barrel layer, you'll feel there's a little bit of a kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty backbone to this one. So the way that that goes together is really, really nice, actually. So you can feel that roasty, toasty note there. But above that, you start to get the kind of sweeter rye bready character out of the beer. Yeah. Above the roasty, toasty bread crust, yeah, there's definitely like this kind of sweet, quite dense rye bready character. I don't know if I'd go as far as describing it as kind of cakey in a sense, but it does make sense from that perspective. It has got that little bit of cakiness to it, and it's almost like it's kind of brandy soaked or rum soaked or something like that. You are getting a bit of booziness to the cakey character in this beer, but above that you get this kind of smoother Kladkaka chocolate brownie type thing, and I'm guessing that's from the oaty component of the beer. So yeah, you can feel all of this, and then above that layer you start to get the chocolatey notes out of the beer. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's maybe a sort of 60-ish% cocoa chocolate, a little bit of a drier, darker chocolate, and as you move further forward toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you get a wee bit more of you do get a little bit more of kind of maybe a 40-ish% cocoa chocolate. It does get a little bit more milky and sweet in a sense, but still it's leaning toward the dark end of the spectrum. So yeah, you've got that nice chocolatey layer, then it's got some dryness toward the back of it. So above that, you start to get the actual brown sugary characters from the beer. So I'm a bit unsure about this one. I am starting to wonder if it's double mash or if it's had a longer wort boil or whatever, because you actually do. You've got a kind of circle in the middle of your palate there, and it's got a few layers of brown sugar, so you can feel the base layer is quite leathery. You do have a little bit of that leathery character that I talked about that's associated with a long boil, but then above that, you've got a layer of kind of toasty caramel. Then you've got a sweeter caramel layer, and then in the dead centre of your palate, you've got the more oily treacle molasses sort of thing, and of course that is the concentration of the alcohol. So the brown sugars in this beer are very layered on top of the chocolate. Then you've got the kind of cakey notes from the oats, the rye bread, and the toasty bread crust, then all the barrel character we talked about earlier. It's a very layered beer, this one, in terms of the middle third of your palate, and that of course is where the main complexity of this, the flavour of this beer actually is. So yeah, the other thing I would point out is maybe you just get a little slight touch of like almond or pecan type flavour out of this one toward the front of that middle third of your palate, the further into the aftertaste. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else really to say about the. I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about the middle third of your palate in this beer. So let's go on to the back third of the palate then. So, in terms of the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you do get a little bit of this kind of cakey build up in there, and it is like a really chocolate heavy Kladkaka kind of it's like a really chocolate heavy Kladkaka chocolate brownie type thing. But yeah, the base of the palate is a little bit more kind of the base of the palate is a little bit more sort of woody. You do get that. You can feel the kind of thick brown sugars on top of this, but remember, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate. But this shows you how barrel heavy this beer is, that there's so much sweetness on the barrel side of things in the back half of the palate, or the back third of the palate, I should say. But then above that, you start to get you do get the more kind of rye bready layer. You can feel that's a little bit taller and a bit more airy. It still has quite a bit of sweetness to it. Then you've got that more dense kind of chocolate cakey layer, and above that you can feel some of the, it's almost like a cocoa nibby dryness. You can feel some of that dark chocolatey dryness just kind of, pardon me, creeping over into the back third of the palate. Above all of that though, above all of that, you've got more of a, you do have a little bit more of a kind of yeasty character coming out of the beer. So let's just look at those yeasty notes at the moment. Yeah, the yeasty notes on the top of that back third of the palate are like a very sweet but slightly woody kind of bready character. There's a lot of honeycomb in there for me. I always get honeycomb on the top of the back third of the palate for some reason, but yeah, like a very sweet wholemeal kind of farmhousey type bread with a little bit of honeycomb and a wee bit of dryness to it for sure. But I think that covers the barrel and malty side of this beer, which is of course the prime focus with this style. But definitely back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is taller, and as you come further forward into the palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way this beer goes together I think is really nice in that sense. The barrel, it's quite barrel heavy as we said, but you've got a really lovely Imperial Stout on top of that. I'd love to taste the original Imperial Stout and see what it's all about, you know, that would be quite interesting. But yeah, I think that covers everything about the malty and yeasty and barrel side of things. Let's look at the hoppy side. So back corners of the palate, you've got a little touch of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it has got a wee bit of herbal character, but it's mainly a smooth earthiness. That comes forward quite a little bit, and then you start to get a little touch of floral character as you move further forward, little touch of it on the kind of front corners of your palate. But round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is distinctly more light and grassy for sure, and you've just got that little touch of zestiness to it, which I think is very nice. So yeah, little touch of kind of grassiness to the beer, and yeah, I think that goes together really well. So yeah, as I say, most of the hoppy characters dropped out, but there is some still kind of sitting there, which is nice too. But then the front half, the front third of your palate, don't know why I keep saying half in this video, but the front third of your palate with this one has got some lovely character to it as well. So that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that almost kind of cakey build up. The cakey side of things in this instance though, it is a little bit more along the lines of like a rum or brandy soaked bread. It's like a sweet kind of fruit loaf type thing. So you can feel that in there. The base of the front third of your palate, there's a little bit of woodiness. There's a little bit of, so yeah, you've got a little bit of the woodiness in there. You've got the brown sugars, and then you've just got a little bit of the kind of dry, you've got a little bit of that rye bready character, but above all of that, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on that. So yeah, on the fruity side of things, on top of that back half of the front third of your palate, I'm not getting as much raisin as I was from the aroma. I do get a little bit of an oily plum, but actually on that back half of the front third of your palate, I'm getting a lot more kind of prune and date and sultana. I'm getting a lot of that in there. There's maybe a little bit of a kind of oily peary character as well, but then as you move further forward, into the front half of that front third of your palate, as you reach that centre point, you do get a little bit of a kind of juicy figgy character out of the beer, and you've got juicy kind of blackcurrant forming the base, but above all of that, it's kind of blackberry like. So yeah, the back half of that front third of your palate is more about the dry fruits, like I say, prunes, dates, sultanas, and a little bit of an oily pear. Then you've got figs in the middle, blackcurrant and blackberry sitting on top of that. So yeah, I really do like how all of that pieces together in this beer. It's the fruity side of this one. It's, yeah, there's a lot more dry character to this one on the fruity side of things than the aroma would have you believe. So this beer, in some ways, it really sticks to what you would expect from the aroma, but it also gives you a lot more complexity, and there are parts of the beer, particularly the fruits, that kind of diverge from what you expect too. But it's a lovely beer, this one, as I say, and I wouldn't expect anything less from either Lervig or Põhjala. So a big thumbs up to both. But I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer. Let's finish off with a look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, definitely a full-bodied beer. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And it's kind of pushing the top end of full-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It's a big, thick, oily, slick, but still kind of silky Imperial Stout, I have to say. In terms of IBUs, it's hard to say with this one. There is a little bit of dryness to this beer the further into the aftertaste you go. But yeah, it's kind of hard. You know, you could easily conflate that dryness with bitterness. So it's maybe, but this beer, it doesn't feel bitter to me. It just feels a little bit more dry. So I think this beer is maybe like, 10, 15, 20 IBUs, something like that, technically speaking, because there is a little bit of roastiness from some of the malty character in the beer. But yeah, overall it has got a little bit of dryness, and so maybe the dryness gives you the impression of a slightly bigger bitterness. But like we said, the malt base has the nice kind of smooth and woodiness to it. There's a lot of sweet spirit and maple syrup character in there. Then you've got the nice kind of, you've got a bit of roastiness in the malt base. You've got a lot of kind of smoothness in there, some sweetness as well. The malt base is where this beer really kind of shines, and the sort of relationship between the barrel and the kind of beer itself is really quite interesting. But a very barrel forward Imperial Stout for sure. Not a lot of hoppy character to this one. Quite a bit of that has dropped out. The stuff that is there is quite smooth, and then you've got that lovely kind of juicy, oily, fruity character coming out of this beer too. But yeah, I think this has been a really nice beer to review, and I certainly look forward to the other one that I have from this series as well, because this was one of two that really caught my eye when I was in Copenhagen about a year ago. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So this was the Night by the Lake Rackhouse edition from Lervig Aktiebryggeri in Stavanger in Norway, brewed in collaboration with Põhjala from Tallinn in Estonia. Let's leave it at that. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Lervig and Põhjala as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. But this is a lovely beer. It will be a little bit more expensive because it comes from Norway, but it is definitely worth it. You certainly won't regret shelling out a little bit to try this one. Beautiful, beautiful beer. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out the brewery's social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Sláinte, skål, and cheers.